From his Yorkshire constituency, former Conservative chairman David Davis. David Davis, the Tory leadership is clearly dancing more to UKIP's tune. We're going to see that in the Queen's speech next week. It's also clear voters don't trust the change in mood music. What has your party got to do to win that trust?
Well, firstly, I enjoyed you making my constituent dance there, Godfrey. It's got to start off by not being contemptuous of the people who voted for UKIP. I mean, they weren't extremists. They were ordinary people. I saw them going to the polling stations up here in Yorkshire. They were very often lower middle class, so-called aspirant voters, and we've got to treat them seriously. And we certainly didn't do that before this election.
Have you been contemptuous?
Well, I think the comments made about them were contemptuous and wrong. So that's the start. It's a mindset start. But we've also got to make them feel that we care about their issues, that we care about the taxes they have to pay, that about their job prospects and so on. And I'm afraid one of the things that came back, it was actually quite shocking really, on the doorstep in these elections, was the extent to which a large number of those who voted UKIP simply were doing so because they didn't think any of the major parties, ourselves, Labour, the Liberals, really cared much about them and were sort of in a different world. So things like lower taxes, things like improved job prospects are important, as well, of course, as Europe, which is
well, let me come on to Europe.
Not just because it's UKIP, but because the next election is Europe. Yeah.
Well, let me come on to Europe. Can there be a European referendum this side of the general election? Whether it's a mandate referendum or even an in-out referendum, can there be anything like that without Lib Dem support, which won't be forthcoming?
Well, it'd be very interesting, I think, if you put the prospect of a mandate referendum, and for your viewers, that's a referendum which allows the country to approve or disapprove the country's negotiating stance, the government's negotiating stance. You could do that in the next 6 months in timetable terms. In terms of politics, it'd be very interesting for the Liberals and indeed the Labour Party to vote against giving the public a say on this matter. I think the politics of that for them are very difficult. And if I were the Prime Minister, I would actually put it to the House of Commons, say this is what I want to do. This actually gives the people a say not just in the final outcome, but how we approach it. And it's up to you, House of Commons, to make that choice. If it was rejected by the other parties, and I think that would actually cause a new dividing line in British politics, and one which would be beneficial to the Tories, although that's not important.
If there was a backbench bill promoting that kind of referendum, should the Tory leadership support it?
Well, I think the Tory leadership should take it as a policy, so the answer to that is obviously yes.
But if the Lib Dems stop them from taking it as a policy?
Well, look, the Lib Dems are, what, 1/6 or 1/7 of the coalition MPs. Should they have a veto on everything? I don't think so. Should they have the right to say no to something which is so fundamental to the future of the country? I don't think so. And we're coming up to a period in any event when the two major parts of the coalition are going to move apart as they see a general election coming. I don't think we can go into that period giving Nick Clegg a veto on every policy.
Why do you think the Prime Minister likes to surround himself with so many old Etonians?
I don't know. I mean, this is a blind spot. I mean, it's not just about class. This problem of being out of touch is not just about class or cliquishness. After all, if it were, Boris Johnson would have a problem with it too, and he clearly gets by it. But it does open up a weakness. It does allow other people to accuse us of being out of touch, and that's serious. That is very serious. I mean, we're not a nation of inverted snobs. Nobody really cares where an individual comes from, but the concern is more: are they paying attention? Do they understand the things that I face as an ordinary person? The fact that I'm having trouble making ends meet, the fact that I can't afford the taxes and the heating costs and the growing costs of food and so on. All those things, the public have got to believe the government understands. And I think at the moment, a fair chunk of them, 25–30% of them, don't believe that.
Don't you agree with Jesse Norman, a Tory MP, and also an old Etonian, that it's because of their selfless commitment to public service? He's probably because he didn't go to Eton. We've just had a freeze frame there. If we get David Davis back, we will do so. But listening to David Davis is the current chairman of the Conservative Party, Grant Shapps. Welcome to the Sunday Politics, and for allowing me to come a little earlier to you than we intended. Will you bring forward legislation before the election, paving the way for a referendum on EU membership?
Well, effectively, the next election will be that referendum, or whether people want a renegotiation with the EU. If they do want us to renegotiate with the EU, if they want a referendum after that, then voting Conservative in 2015 is the surefire way to get there.
So the answer is no. No referendum, even a mandate referendum this side of the election.
Well, I simply say, I mean, look, we're in a coalition, as you know. We didn't win the last election, which is where many of the difficulties come from. To introduce legislation, you have to have the approval of both sides in the coalition. Unless the Lib Dems are going to allow it, and I suspect they won't, we'll have to make the election itself the referendum over whether or not you want to renegotiate, want us to renegotiate powers with Europe. If you do, vote Conservative, and that's precisely what we'll go do.
What if a Conservative backbencher brought forward such a bill? Would the Conservative leadership support that sort of bill?
Well, let's see what happens from here on in. You're asking me whether we're likely to be able to introduce a government bill. I think the answer is no, because of the way that Parliament operates.
So what if it was a backbench bill calling for a mandate referendum?
Let's wait and see what happens going forward.
But you see, that plays into UKIP's hands. When you interview UKIP on things like this, you get a clear answer.
Sure.
When I interview you and other mainstream parties, it's, oh, well, let's wait and see.
Sure, and it must be great to not have to kind of take into account any niceties like the way that Parliament actually operates or the exact wording of a bill brought forward by a backbencher, to use the example that you've cited. But the reality is, in the real world, things aren't quite as black and white. There's large areas of distinction and detail, which at the moment a party like UKIP doesn't really have to worry about. But actually, in the real world, you do have to kind of know about before you commit to something.
There's a head of steam in your backbenches building up for this. Are you going to deny it?
Well, I hear you're part of trying to build up a head of steam for that. What I'm saying is,
I'm simply telling you what your colleagues are telling me.
Some colleagues want to see
at least
that happen.
20.
What I'm talking about is the 304 MPs, Conservative MPs.
So they're a minority.
What I'm saying is, what we want to do is make the legislation available, bring it forward. So we will actually publish a bill which says this is what we will do. This is how we will go and negotiate. This is the referendum bill. We'll publish it. Of course, we may well challenge other parties to support it. We want to have that referendum on a reformed Europe. We are explaining exactly, if you agree with us on that, how to get there, which is to vote Conservative in 2015 and make sure we can have that referendum.
So that bill wouldn't come before Parliament until after the next election if you win it?
Well, we certainly will publish that bill, and we'll encourage others to support it. Now, if we can get people to support it, then it can come before Parliament.
All right. All the polls, you only got 25% of the vote as a national projection on Thursday. All the polls show that voters think you're out of touch, you're smug, even arrogant. Why does the appointment of even more old Etonians to number 10 help counter that impression?
Well, look, I don't think that in this country people hold it against people where they happen to go to school. They're more interested in what people are offering for the future, where they want to take them in the future. I don't hold it against anybody, whether it's people in our party or, frankly, Nigel Farage, just because he went to a public school. I didn't. He happened to. I don't care. Why don't we just get on with talking about what matters to people in this country?
Why are there so many old... I mean, it is... Downing Street's like Lord Snooty and his pals.
It's not, though. I mean, it's not true. I'm in Downing Street probably every day. As I've just told you, I went to a state school.
But you're not in Downing Street. Why is almost everybody so close to the Prime Minister come from exactly the same kind of background? Is that the only place where there's merit in this country?
Despite the fact I'm trying to explain it's not true. And by the way, I am in and out of Downing Street every
Yeah, but they're in Downing
day.
Street. They're not in and out. They're next to him.
But you do come back to this fundamental point. What's interesting? What matters to people? It matters whether we're helping to be on the side of hard-working families. It matters if we're producing more jobs. It matters if we're controlling immigration, cutting the deficit. Those are the things that matter, all things that we're making progress on, and things which actually, when the electorate are looking at who to vote for, who to support, who they think best represents themselves. They'll be looking for the party who's making progress in those areas, which is why, and it can't be brushed over, it's important that we've cut the deficit by a third, that we've cut immigration by a third, that we've got 1.25 million new private sector jobs. We're making progress. I hear the message from Thursday. We hear it, we get it, we're on it, we want to make faster progress, but we're on the case.
But you know, as you know, it's not just Europe that helps UKIP, is it? If you believe in small government, if you believe in lower taxes, grammar schools, a tough line on immigration and law and order, and you prefer lower fuel bills to higher carbon taxes, UKIP, not you, UKIP is now your natural home.
No, I think we are the party of enterprise, the people who go out, set up small businesses, lie awake at night and worry about paying staff. That's the Conservative Party. We believe in that kind of entrepreneurial society.
So why did only 25% vote for you?
First of all, Andrew, actually, let's just get what happened on Thursday into some form of perspective. I mean, well done to UKIP. They did well in those elections. However, we won 1,116 council seats. They won less than 150. We control
from nowhere.
18. Sure, but nonetheless, let's just get this in proportion. We still run 18 councils.
On all these
UKIP
issues,
run none, Labour run 2.
On all these issues, UKIP are closer to your natural supporters now than you are. When you did this rebranding of the Tory party to suit the attitudes of the metropolitan chattering classes, did it never occur to you that you were opening up a huge gap in the market for a populist party to charge through?
I just don't see politics as being, you either have to appeal to only this group, this demographic or subsection of society, or only this group, and you can't do more than that. In truth, and it came out in that little interview you did with Godfrey Bloom, the UKIP MEP there, they have a set of policies which aren't best thought out, and you pointed out they now campaign against High Speed 2. They wanted to build 3 railways up and down the country. Their section on immigration, when you look on their website, says this policy is under review. Well, this is from what they now like to say is a major force in British politics. The point is, once you are under the kind of proper scrutiny that their policy and plans deserve, then actually we can tease some of these things out. And I don't think we should just be trying to appeal to one group or section of society. I think we should be trying to appeal to everyone, everywhere in the UK.
But we do know one thing. If you want David Cameron to become a proper Conservative again, you vote UKIP.
No, David Cameron is a proper Conservative in the best tradition of the Conservative Party.
You're talking about immigration and welfare and all sorts of things.
Issues. Look at those issues.
You never emphasised before.
Well, look at these issues. We said in our last manifesto we would cut immigration back to the levels of the 1990s. We've already cut it by a third. There are figures coming out in the next few weeks. We're making progress. We said we wanted discipline on our public finances. We've cut the deficit by a third. We said we wanted entrepreneurship. Yeah. We've got more new businesses in this country than ever before. We are making progress and getting, we hear people and we're on it and we're getting somewhere.
It's not me you have to convince, it's the voters, and they're clearly very unconvinced. I think we've got David Davis back again in his constituency, if we can just see. Yeah, David Davis, sorry for that. Somebody must have pulled the plug on you. I was asking you if you didn't agree. The reason why there are so many Oldetonians is because, as Jesse Norman, one of your colleagues on the back, Tory MP, also an Oldetonian, is that they have such a wonderful selfless commitment to public service.
Well, I'm sure they do, and actually Jesse's a very good example. I'm a big fan of Jesse's. Indeed, I went to support Jesse in the last election. But the point is not about the individuals, and the point is not, frankly, in many ways, about the education of an individual. It is about the fact it's a narrow stratum. And that's the problem, the feeling out in the country. And I made the point, it's allowing the impression to grow, which is the problem. There is a feeling out in the country that this is a group of people who don't understand their concerns. And when Margaret Thatcher, we just had the funeral of Margaret Thatcher a week or two ago, she never confined her cabinet to one stratum, one type, one side of the party. She had the William Waldegraves and the Pattons and so on. So there's a feeling out there that this is a narrow base, and that's the problem. It's that problem that is feeding the enthusiasm for UKIP, because that, as I say, UKIP's about a mindset, not a manifesto.
All right,
and
David Davis,
frankly, them on that.
Thank
we
you
can
for
attack
that.
them on that, but if we don't solve our own problems, we will not succeed.
All right, David Davis, thank you for that. Grand chaps, it's a narrow